I started my journey as a serious collector, going or chasing for comics sometime in the year 1998. So it's about 20 years now, and then, but all that I started the collection not with the intention of becoming a collector or collecting a lot of things. I was a reader of comics from my very young age, and I used to my first character who got introduced to comics was Mayavi, a character, because I lived in a small village in Kerala, and of course Western comics were I've not even heard of. In fact, I've never seen in my early childhood. And the Mayavi was my introduction to comics. That was published in a comic magazine called Balarama, which was published by Manorama Group. And so I asked my mom to get a comic magazine, and then she immediately agreed. And then I used to subscribe for Balarama, and from the very first issue, I used to read that. Along with that, the newspaper guy, distributor, used to get this Indrajal comics. I was looking at the covers. I was, interested at least to see that. Then I used to take the copy and then just refer and give it back also. Then along with that, I wanted that also, and I in fact, after a long cry with my mom, she finally agreed to, because that time, subscribing for a comic, it was a costly affair. Even for newspaper, it was difficult for us. And my father was in Air Force, and then, once in a while he comes to Kerala. Okay, anyway, so finally she agreed to subscribe for Indrajal Comics as well. And in my younger days, so this Phantom, actually he's not, I cannot call him as a superhero because he doesn't have any superpowers. He's just, because I was able to relate with Phantom. I always wished, I should become like Phantom. Certain qualities I slowly started imbibing from him. Like he used to carry a gun, but he seldom used it for, killing people. He used it, either shoot down the other gun, or, he's an animal lover, he's an environmental lover. And he's got certain ethics and principles in life which he carries. I do not know, slowly it would have come to me as well. Definitely some qualities have come to me as well. This Phantom really captivated me to the comic reading. And then I was a regular reader of Indrajal comics. I used to subscribe as such. But I never used to preserve as such, or keep aside. I just keep aside. Even friends ask, I used to give, and we used to share things like that. But after my schooling, we relocated our house to Bangalore. Till now I do not know where my comics went, but I lost my entire collection, what I used to read in my early days. And I thought that would be the end of it. It was in the year 89, we moved to Bangalore. And then, so 89, 90, Indrajal also stopped publishing. And I really don't know why it is stopped, because such a huge readership it had, even at that point also. So I was thinking that's the end of my comic life. And I, in fact, made an initial search in few places, but unsuccessful. But later, after my college also, I got my first job. I was working for a tabloid. I was just casually talking to a friend of mine, a colleague of mine. And I said I had a superhero, I had a hero. Who is that? Then I said, Phantom is my hero. Phantom? My father used to read and he used to tell stories and things like that. Then I just requested him, can you search for, at least one or two comics, or ask your father if he's got some comics with him. And he said, yeah, I'll ask him anyway. Maybe he might have, but he's not, preserved it like that or anything. But very next day, surprisingly, he got me to comic books. And that day, even now I remember, it was a truly nostalgic, emotional day for me. And night I couldn't sleep at all. I told him, in fact, I'm going to, look out for a run for my own childhood stuff, for my phantoms particularly. And then he said, Nare Baba, you keep this what you have got, and be happy. I don't think you'll get anywhere. But I took it as a challenge, and then because that day, it really pulled me back to my, younger days, early days. Then that was the starting, where I went for a chase for comics. Then every Sunday markets, and even in, the Majestic, there was this Sangam Theatre area where there was at least about 10 to 15 guys selling on Sundays especially these second-hand books. Even now, one or two are there. But that time it was like 10 to 15 guys on the street were there. I used to go there regularly. Then slowly I started getting one or two, three stuffs, not just from there, Avenue Road I used to go. Then there are a couple of pockets where I search comics for. But today it is all, most of them vanished, and except for, that Blossom guy who's selling a huge, second-hand book stuff. But that was where my hunt started, and the collection again. The hunt started not with, as I told you, not with an intention of building anything, but on my journey, I used to get interesting comics, like Amar Chitra, old Amar Chitra Katha, Tinkle, Adarsh Chitra Katha, Chadurang Katha, and whatnot. There is varied kind of comics which I collected and I read, and then, but then again, I never used to preserve. I used to keep, and it was all in carton boxes like that. I used to keep it, and I do not know. Some years back, this History Channel guys came to know about my collection, and then they contacted me, and then because they were having a tour that was called Great India Collectors Ride, and they wanted to look out my collection and feature my collection in their this thing in the program. And I till then I was thinking, these are all comics just for reading. How this collection can be like a display item, and these guys came, and before they could come, at least I arranged. I bought carton boxes, acid-free boxes. I put in. That was a job for me. Like arranging and keeping it safe, and like at least a displayable thing. And after they came, I said this was not the scene earlier. It was like more like a junkyard. They said that would have been better because seeing like all junks everywhere with huge carton boxes with comics and things like that. That would have been better. And I also thought, I also felt, yeah, better. But today I have a kind of I started categorizing, cataloging, and I have a kind of an archive built at my place, a ground floor space I've utilized for this purpose. But after, and then meanwhile, this Comic-Con guys for the first time came to India, and then they also sent me a mail and asking me if I could, display some of my comics. Slowly, then after taking some time, I agreed for that because I said we'll take care of all the expenses and we'll have a nice place to display and things like that. Then I agreed for that, and I had a display also. And during the display also, then again, why display comics? So that was my, and then some few stuffs I displayed which, thought it would be interesting to the Indian audience, Indian comic lovers. I was being there displaying, I was more keen in watching, people's faces turning, looking at Tinkle, the first issue of Tinkle. Slowly they watch it and go a little back, then come back again and see. And so I've seen ladies, filled with their eyes, like they go back to their childhood, and they have fond memories with comic books. And that is what, that is what the pleasure what I got, like these kind of emotional touch with that stuff which they would have enjoyed, read in their childhood, which is no more with them. And I was able to show them at least the covers. So, then I also thought, there is some kind of a value for it, because somewhere preservation is taking a step forward. Then, then, then I started one by one looking at my the collection. Then each day when I open up a carton box, I find astonishing stuff, like not just the storyline, but in between the pages, like I see films through comics, I see sports through comics, I see biographies through comics. So I can relate with anything with comics. Films, for example, I have a collection of Satyajit Ray's comics, which he was a filmmaker. Very few people know that he was a comic book artist or a comic creator. And I had that stuff, and there is a connection, films and comics. G. Aravindan, who was a famous filmmaker in Kerala, Malayalam, and he was running a comic strip called Cheriya Logam, Cheriya Manusharam Valiya Logam, which was very popular, and which when I looked at it, it's a very serious kind of a comic, not like the story general, superhero stuffs, which talked about socio-political, issues in Kerala and daily life in Kerala, things like that. Then Bobna Molly, for that matter, very popular stuff in Malayalam, but certainly when you look at this, Toms is a creator and is a illustrator, and you look at the whole range of comics that talked about varied things. And in fact, recently, I posted a picture in my Facebook page also. Tom's talked about the flood in Kerala about some years back, and I was wondering, what is this? So I see wonders through comics, and I think this Tom's in India, I think Tom's is the most underrated artist, because his lines are so, you can compare with any Western, stuffs, very serious comic stuff. And not just that, there is a famous case, I don't know if you know, with the creator and the publisher, because Tom's created Bobani Molin, and he was with Malayalam Manorama. And Manorama, when after working for some years, he left the job and he wanted to publish his own character, Bobni Molly. And Manorama objected, they said, you can't publish it, that's ours. And Tom's filed a case, and then case ran for some years. Ultimately, the right for Bobni Molly went to Manorama. And surprisingly, the very next day newspaper, the story carried Manorama gifted Tom's, Bobni Molly to Tom's, surprisingly. And then later Tom's brought out his own issues. So these are, that is a landmark judgment for, creator, publisher, rights on a character. And these sort of things within comics I started seeing, that made me, interesting and more, curious to know more about what I have, and in between the pages, when it was published, why it was published. And just for example, we were talking about, Amar Chitrakatha's starting. And very few people, Amar Chitrakatha is normally known as an Indian comic, Indian mythology, Indian history and things like that. Very few people know that they published even Western comics. Yeah. The first, and I was, in fact, in my starting stages, I also never used to see that. But I was more curious because It started with number 11, story of Krishna. And I was curious to know about the first 10 issues. In fact, I asked, I inquired with the team, my ACK team also. They also said, no, Krishna is the one which, that's the first issue. And then I asked them, why number 11? Then some vague, kind of funny answers they gave. They said 11 is a lucky number, could have been, something like that. But I was almost sure that there should have been the 10 issues. I was looking for that, I was asking so many people about that. Then somewhere some old man, old timer said there is ACK and ACK first 10 issues. Finally, fortunately, I got one issue. Actually, I got the first issue from Bengal. It was in Bengali. Yeah. And I got, ultimately I got the entire 10 issues. And then again, why the 10 issues came, how it came. And you know what, just to see the 10 issues, the entire team of Amachita Katha came to my place to see their own stuffs. That's a thing, And publishers, they have many reasons, why they have not preserved. Like Times of India does not have an Indrajal comic, copy of Indrajal comic. And both Times of India and ACK says they had fire in their godown. That's very hard to believe. So then I thought, what I am doing is like I am kind of preserving the history. I am kind of, then that value one step raised, for me, not just with my childhood stuff, what I read. So now, fortunately, though I don't, believe in the numbers what I have and things like that, I have never counted also. Roughly around 17 to not less than 17,000 comics I have, and that includes, that excludes comic strips, comic magazines, then comic advertisements. I have a huge collection of that, and comic strips starting from 20s, 30s onwards, yeah. And again, preservation is again that with what I take care. I place every comic, now that not all the comic, because it's a costly affair to preserve every comic, because I place each comic with acid-free boards, along with acid-free boards, which absorbs the moisture. Basically a comic book has to be protected from dust and moisture. For that matter, any book, any book or even art also, art material also. So these two aspects are taken care. I think at least 10 times shelf life will be there for a book. Yeah. So what I do is that for moisture part, I place this acid-free board. Acid-free board, again, when I went around asking for acid-free boards, nobody knows that. Then I went to the Bhaskar Art Center. Then they said, we have acid-free boards, but it is used for watercolor works by professional artists. And then I thought that would be an idea. But price range from 105 rupees to 5,000 rupees per board. Then I was thinking, that is not possible, then I bought the cheap, at least some comics I preserve, I thought. I bought a board, then I calculated how many would come in one board. I think about 9 or 11 or something like that would come in one board. And then I bought the cheapest one. He gave it to me for 90 rupees or something per board. And then I cut in pieces and say about 500 comics initially I did that exercise. And again the bags in which then I kind of researched how Western, how European guys used to preserve these stuff. They have mylar sheets to preserve, as for postcards and all that. But here in India, it's very difficult to get. Nobody has it, I think, yeah. And it's again a costly thing. If you want to import also, it's a costly thing. Then I was researching for what is this mylar sheet made of. Basically, it is polypropylene sheets. and what the plastic which is available in the market, it is polythene sheets. So but then I thought, then I was looking for polypropylene sheets. Then I got this polypropylene sheets, which is much cheaper than the mylar sheets. So that I took it as an alternative. That was the initial thing what I did for preservation. That is some years back. So now I have at least about 20 to 30% of my comics being in the bags and boxes. Then carton boxes I made. Custom-made boxes I ordered for boxes which a comic has to be kept vertical. It cannot be kept one top of the other because the spines will break off easily. So I keep it vertical in the boxes and keep it. I have a archive room specially made for this. So and that the process. In the sense, when you get usually this comic book is bought in India, what we get is all binded ones, from the second-hand bookstore or, from the street vendors. But for me, actually, binding is like stabbing a comic book, You're not, maybe we can argue on that, they will have shelf life, more shelf life and things like that. But it is actually poking with the needle and thread into the comic book with the gum and trimming all the sides and all that. Okay, whatever we get, it is something precious because we don't have a culture of preserving, and we don't have a culture, and you'll have to learn certain things like, scrapbooking. We don't have that culture at all. We don't have memory boxes. Whereas you see Europeans, they have all. When you go to any old man or old lady, they will have a memory box kept aside, and wonderful. They open up the box. It's actually pleasure for themselves to see their own stuffs. It could be some small stuffs, but it tells stories of their own, and it's actually preserving history of theirs. That culture has to come. It's nice that you guys are doing. I mean, I really feel happy about it. And so I built the collection. That's how I built my collection. And then today I'm here to speak about comics, but I never even imagined that I could one day speak about my collection or comics. Yeah, that's my story.